After some 3 hours of waiting for the rain to subside, the race started from the pit lane and behind the safety car and was then stopped after completing the 2 laps required to award half points. George Russell finished second for Williams, his first Formula One podium, with 7 times world champion Lewis Hamilton third for Mercedes. Hamilton's overall lead over Verstappen was cut from 8 points to 3. The race was due to get underway at 3 p.m. local time, but heavy rain saw the start of the formation lap delayed until 3:25 p.m. before the start procedure was aborted entirely following a single lap behind the safety car. Formula One had hoped for a break in the weather, but over the space of 3 hours and 45 minutes, just 3 laps at reduced pace behind the safety car were possible before any chance of holding a race was abandoned. As a result, the cars finished in the same order in which they lined up on the grid, with half points being awarded under the regulations as less than 75% of the race distance was completed. Sergio Perez, who had qualified 7th, finished last after crashing on the way to the grid ahead but was allowed to rejoin for the 3 laps completed behind the safety car. In order for any points to be awarded, 2 laps needed to be completed, which helped explain why organizers waited for so long to try and complete a handful of laps in such appalling conditions. When a race is red flagged, the result is counted from the penultimate lap, hence why 3 laps were completed but the results were taken from the end of lap 2. In the hope of holding something resembling a race, the stewards overruled F1's own regulations that limit the window in which the race can take place to 3 hours, citing force majeure, but their efforts proved futile as wave after wave of heavy rain passed over the track, limiting visibility and any chance of racing properly at the high-speed circuit. The result moves Verstappen 3 points off Hamilton in the drivers' standings ahead of next weekend's Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. Spa-Francorchamps, Belgium. It took Formula One 3 hours and 44 minutes to complete 3 laps at the Belgian Grand Prix, the shortest race in the championship's 71-year history. Fans at the circuit were furious, with many staying in the heavy rain all afternoon only to be rewarded by the sight of 3 processional laps behind the safety car. Hamilton led the criticism of the outcome, labeling the event a farce, and repeatedly saying post-race that the fans who attended Spa-Francorchamps deserved a full refund. Yet, notably, Hamilton's frustration wasn't aimed at the decision not to race. The Mercedes driver, renowned as a master of wet conditions, admitted racing safely on Sunday was simply impossible. "Obviously, we can't control the weather, and I love racing in the rain, but today was something else," Hamilton said. "You really couldn't see the car ahead, there was aquaplaning, it was just a disaster on track." In fact, none of Hamilton's rivals disagreed with the decision not to go racing on Sunday. But, like Hamilton, a lot of them were frustrated with how the event unfolded. Before we look at some of the more contentious issues, such as the half points, it's important to look at why F1 appeared to be playing an impossible waiting game against Mother Nature on Sunday afternoon. The rain you could see on the television screens was not the same as the rain visible through the window of the Spa-Francorchamps Media Center. It was already heavy in the morning, and that intensity got worse after lunch as the allotted start time, 3 p.m. local time, approached. It is an understatement to say the TV images did not do it justice. By the time the race was supposed to start, the rain was blowing sideways across the paddock and pit lane. That remained the case for much of the afternoon, with one slight let-up which we will come to. McLaren driver Daniel Ricciardo later suggested that the best time to start the race would have been half an hour before the scheduled time, when conditions were better than they would be for the rest of the day, a fact we know now but did not know then. He lost control of his car on the way to the grid at 2:30 p.m. and slid into a wall. When 3 p.m. rolled around, the rain wasn't an issue as much as the standing water on track. The design of modern F1 cars means the spray out of the rear of the car is huge. Lando Norris pointed out that it was striking how little water the Mercedes safety car, a modified AMG GTR road car, threw out behind it in comparison to the 20 F1 cars which were following its speed behind. It was a night and day's difference. At racing speed, the spray behind the F1 cars would have been even greater. When Verstappen pulled into the pit lane at the first suspension of the race, which came after 3 formation laps, he said he felt the conditions at 3:30 p.m. "We're good enough to start the race," a verdict he echoed after the race was finally abandoned at 6:44 p.m. The 19 drivers behind Verstappen were experiencing things a little differently to the race leader. George Russell, running second, claimed he couldn't see the flashing red light on the back of Verstappen's car. Ferrari's Carlos Sainz said he could barely see past his steering wheel. "From pole position for sure you can start," Sainz said when told Verstappen's viewpoint. "From P11, there wasn't, at any point during today, I saw it ready to start. Trust me, if there would have been the smallest of windows, I would have been the first one on the radio telling them to start." Pierre Gasly, running in fifth, put it most bluntly. Gasly started his weekend by laying flowers at Ray Dillon and saying a prayer for his friend Antoine Hubert, who was killed in a Formula 2 crash at Spa in 2019. Hubert lost control of his car and was T-boned by Juan Manuel Correa, who was unable to take evasive action at one of the fastest sections of racetrack in motor racing. Gasly hinted that F1 risked a disaster if it tried to race in those conditions. "The problem was, you always rely on all the guys in front of you to stay on track and go at a similar speed that you're going, because if somebody is stopped then you arrive at 200 to 250 km/h, Gasly said. Visibility was about 30 meters. Once you see the car at 200 to 250, there's no way you're stopping. We've seen enough horrible things here on this track. I think unfortunately not racing was the right option. Risk does not just apply to drivers either. As pointed out by Sebastian Vettel, the safety of the 20 drivers on track is one consideration, the safety of the fans dotted around the circuit is another. No one wants anyone," Vettel said. "We don't want to get hurt in the car and we don't want any spectators to get hurt. That's always priority number one. It's probably not a popular decision but probably the right decision in the conditions today." For FIA race director Michael Masi, who ultimately decides whether it is safe enough to go racing, it was a near impossible situation. As well as field messages and queries from F1's 10 teams, Masi was also studying weather radars and waiting for an opportunity to go racing again. While F1 has often found a lull in weather or a window of opportunity in previous rainy Sundays, on this occasion the forecast was bleak. Before the race several teams told ESPN their forecasts had the rain continuing as it was all the way through to midnight. Complicating this situation even further was that F1's rigid schedule allows for no leeway in terms of rescheduling to Monday or to later in the season. It was now or never. One opportunity presented itself at shortly after 6 p.m., when the rain briefly relented over La Source and then the rest of the circuit. This lull in the weather lasted for maybe 10 minutes at best and much of that time was spent with F1's medical car doing reconnaissance laps of the long Spa circuit to see whether the standing water had dissipated. By the time F1 had got the pack out to start the race, the rain had intensified again. There would be no second let-up and after 3 laps behind the safety car, the race was officially stopped.